You're listening to episode 128 of the D6 podcast.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 podcast. Here's your hosts, Ron Hunter and Jeremy Lee.
This is the family ministry podcast that helps you connect the church and home. Ron.
Yes.
One of the things I love about D6 is you guys, how long have you been doing D6 now?
Oh, man, since 2009 was our first one, and we've been doing the curriculum prior to that.
Wow. Speaking of curriculum, pause, time out. It's curriculum season, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely. Number one quarter of the year is the fall quarter. Everybody's kind of back to school. They jump back in hard into small groups and life groups and Sunday school.
So we've got an amazing show. I want to set that up here in a second. But before we go much further, I always want to take breaks during these times of year when people are thinking about curriculum. And can you give just a capsule of kind of what's going on with the curriculum and pretend someone has never heard of it before and just kind of give a quick capsule of it?
Man, I can't imagine our listeners never having heard. Our D6 curriculum, straightforward, is, I put it this way. You come to the conference to find inspiration and ideas. You read books to train people, but use curriculum as a tool to help people live out discipleship every single day. And here's the fallacy. If churches only use curriculum on the campus of the church, then you've turned discipleship into an event, and people are not living out discipleship. We have created a family-aligned curriculum where, yes, everybody's aligned teaching the same thing on the campus of the church, but when they go home, they have devotional magazines, and the families continue to read together, either around the table or separately in their own age group-specific devotional magazine. And it gives parents easy softball questions to toss the kids when they're in the car, when they're at the dinner table, when the kids walk through the door, just so they can engage them beyond just the surface level conversation that they're going to have every day. The quarter that we happen to be in right now, we're going to be dealing with godly leadership, remedies for sin, and how to handle life when it gets hard. Those are our three major topics. There's 3 studies in one. So each month we tackle something different in there and keep it fresh. Over the course of 6 years, we'll take people through the entire Bible, and we trace the Messianic thread from the Old Testament all the way through the New Testament. And we bounce back and forth from the Old to the New, so it doesn't get boring staying in one part of the Bible very long.
And I think one of the uniquenesses you guys can draw out is there is a huge team here behind this. This is not just a couple of people who, this is a large, I know you're not just the largest, but this is a large organization with how many people behind it? Yeah,
well, you think about it. We have 45 in-house, and we have about 80 out-of-house people who are all working on these kinds of resources to provide excellent helps for you at church and home.
And if we were some people may think it's all about the conference, but if we were going to nail down the thing, like if you could only do one thing, you guys would probably...
The absolute number one thing that we do that continues to get our customers back and forth is curriculum and devotional magazines.
Yeah. It's your prime time.
It's 65% of our total income source. The conference is really a small portion of that.
Yeah. So I know you might be more known sometimes for the D6 conference, but my goodness, that curriculum, people, and the growth, I want to make sure people understand that this is, about right when I started working with you 4 or 5 years ago, it was right around the time y'all were repackaging the curriculum. And since then, it has skyrocketed in growth.
We've been very, very pleased. We went 2 years in a row, quarter after quarter, record over record. People are looking for the answers that we have got right here. They're looking for that source. And all you got to do is show them how to use it. And we have some great customer service agents and online videos and helps. We had a starter box it makes this life easy for you to just get it and use it. So if you'd like, just go ahead and call our 800 number, 800-877-7030, and ask for a sample kit, or get on the website, d6family.com, and look for the curriculum. You can also order a sample kit.
How do you? Nobody remembers phone numbers nowadays.
No, they don't. They don't.
Like I guess you have to remember that one. That's kind of like a.
Yeah, I think I'd have to turn in my timesheet if I didn't have that one.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I was thinking about that the other day, though. My son has a phone, and I'm like, I don't know his phone number. I call him a lot, but I don't know his phone number.
I was actually just thinking, if you go to ask me about my kids or my wife, my wife changed numbers about 18 months ago, and for the life of me, she does have a pretty easy one, but there's times I have to pause and think it through.
Oh man!
But yeah, I've quoted that one a lot through the years, and everybody else is on speed dial, but I don't dial on 800 number on speed dial.
Well, I appreciate you guys letting us have the chance to tell you about the curriculum. We work hard to earn the right to do that every once in a while. We try to give you a ton of free and great stuff. But we do want to make sure that y'all know that there is a curriculum associated with this that kind of fuels all of this discussion.
Yeah.
Now, the family ministry discussion, we're going to continue it today. One of the things I like about D6 is you guys are always finding new conversations in the family ministry. I mean,
yeah.
And also, you're not afraid to talk about some of the stuff that sometimes it's hard to talk about.
Yeah. I had a pastor the other day email me and say, hey, Ron, I listen to the podcast on a regular basis, and I get this question often. They said, how do you address singles? How do you address widows or widowers? And he just asked the out of the ordinary question. I'm like, we probably deal with it more in live events. But, I was thinking about our guest even today. These are the unusual topics that churches need to be aware of. And it's not just when things are going right. That everybody can handle when life goes right. Mm-hmm. So I'm very proud of the interviews I hear you do, where we're stepping into some minefields.
Yeah.
And we're asking some tough questions of our people.
And one of those topics is what we're going to deal with today, which is postpartum depression. This affects so many people, and it's just like we were discussing before we came on air. Our producer was setting us up for this, and he made a great statement that people feel when they're going through it like they are the only ones. Mm-hmm. Now, when you hear that for me should be that should be like the most attractive thing in the world to a church to hear.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, when someone feels like they're going through something and they are the only ones, that sounds like something that a church could come around them and support them and be a community and an encouragement. Wow, what an opportunity for a church.
That's right. And it really doesn't take rocket science. It really takes them coming around, just what you said, arms wrapped around and love them. And then you pick up pointers from people like our guest today. And then you've got layers of excellence. And you're not even the expert on it, but you're just adding those little bitty incremental items that make a difference.
And one of the ways we can serve you guys is by connecting you to people that you may never have the chance to meet, that have the passion and are working on a daily basis to have this conversation so that you don't have to come up with it yourself. And that's why we're going to let you hear from Aly Thayer today. She works with PPT Journey. It's an online community that helps with postpartum depression. You guys are going to enjoy my discussion with her. But then I have a friend named Robert Beeson, former music executive, helped discover the group Jars of Clay. And but what he loves to talk about is his journey as a solo parent.
That's right. He reminded me when we first sat down, we can go through the stats, and we know that Christian marriages, just slightly less than 50%, do still end in divorce. That number's getting better. It's trending very positively, a lot to do with family ministry and otherwise. But because of divorce, we're going to find a lot of single parents, and those single parents, sometimes they don't remarry. And he told me that stat, 1 in 3 homes are single-parent homes. That should be alarming enough to know the church needs to figure out how to minister to 33% of that total audience. And of those, 67% do not attend church. And so he's going to say, hold it, the church does have an answer here, and there's some things we can do that will become an outreach as well as a ministering partner for these hurting and lonely parents. He calls them solo parents, yeah.
I think we've got 2 opportunities today for that are growth areas for the church. And hope you guys will invest some time getting to know these people so that you'll be able to connect with them and connect people in your church to them so that you can help in a whole new way. You don't have to do everything yourself, but as long as you have people in the body like these 2 folks we're going to be talking to today, they can help connect and serve the people in your church that have these very specific needs. So after the break, we'll talk to Aly Thayer. We'll see you then.
D6 curriculum is centered on the discipleship philosophy found in Deuteronomy 6, that parents and grandparents should be primary in the discipleship of their children. To accomplish this, D6 curriculum aligns every age in church on the same biblical passage or topic. Family alignment serves as a catalyst for parents to have conversations with their children about faith in the home. D6 also provides many other tools to help parents and grandparents. Learn how D6 curriculum can empower parents in your ministry at d6family.com.
I can't wait for you to meet Miss Aly Thayer. She is our guest today. We're going to be talking to you guys about a struggle that a lot of families in your church are going through. And they're probably not going to talk to you about it. But if you hear of someone who's struggling with this, and in general, this is something that you can just promote to the parents in your ministry and in your church. And I bet you once you promote it, and as you hear Aly's story, when she began to talk about it, she began to hear and see more and more people, just as she said, come out of the woodworks to struggle with this issue. We're talking about postpartum depression. And one of the things I love about the D6 podcast, Aly, is we connect people and we network ministers to the solutions for the problems that people in their church are solving. And this is a huge problem. Welcome, Aly. Tell us more about postpartum depression.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name's Aly Thayer, and like he said, I am here to talk to you about postpartum depression. I recently went through it at the beginning of this year after the birth of my daughter, Ella. She is now 7 months old, but the first 2 months of her life are kind of a blur. I was so focused on the issue that I had going on in my brain that I missed those first 2 months with her, which is really heartbreaking for me. But around 3 weeks of her life, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. I was unable to bond with her. I could hardly look at her. Breastfeeding was the worst thing. I didn't enjoy it at all. And I looked at my husband and was like, we're never having kids again, and I can't wait for her to be out of my house in 18 years. I just want her gone. Which is totally against everything that I had ever wanted, because I always wanted to be a wife and a mom. I wanted to adopt and all of those things. And so when those were the feelings that I started having, it was foreign for me because I never thought that that would be me.
And you guys might hear that and go, whoa, that's intense for her to say those things. But these are the feelings that she has, but she's not alone. Aly has provided me with some amazing information. And it says here, Aly, 1 in 7 new moms will suffer from postpartum depression. 1 out of 7?
Yes, and that the number comes down to 10 to 20% of all live births. And what's actually interesting about that is that does not include stillbirths or miscarriages. So there are women that would still be considered the postpartum period that also go through PPD that, that's not even included in the 1 in 7.
And it seems like there's a lot of women. But by the way, you also said men struggle with this. I want to make sure we get that in here.
Yes. 1 in 4 new dads struggle with it, and it is called paternal postnatal depression. And that is a newer thing that research is just now coming out about. And there's really not much on it yet other than they do struggle.
I'm going to tell you this, guys, as you're listening, guys and gals that are ministers, you can pull up Aly's website, PPD, for postpartum depression, PBDjourney.com. Now you have a resource, a link that you can send to the parents in your church, whether they ask for it or not. You can just simply begin talking about this subject and with confidence, because I know, Aly, as ministers, one of the things on subjects like this, we kind of don't like to talk about it as ministers because we get scared somebody's going to actually have the problem and start looking to us for help, and we don't really know good answers. And so thank you for what you're doing, because now hopefully a minister will listen to this and say, oh, now I know where I can send them. I'll talk about it and see if there's anybody in my church that needs help. I have a place I can take them. So you guys, please check out ppdjourney.com. Now, I want to dive in a little bit to your story. These thoughts that you had, I've got to just start asking. Number one, you've got to be afraid people are going to judge you.
Oh, yes.
And then you got to judge yourself.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I actually wrote a list. My best friend is a marriage and family therapist. So she walked really closely with me and was on call really in some of my darkest moments, which was really helpful. But one of her things that she encouraged me to do was journal and to write down, what are you feeling? What are the lies? And then counteract that with what could be the truth, even though you don't feel that that is the truth right now. So some of the ones that I wrote down were, you've made a mistake. This is the biggest mistake of your life that you just made, and now you're stuck with it because you can't get rid of that child. I don't know why you thought you could do this. That was a thought that was constantly in my brain. Why did I ever want this life? Why did I ever think I could be a mom? Because obviously it is not working out for me right now. You're a bad mom. That's a common thought. Your baby would be better off with someone else. I thought I did become suicidal at one point, and my thinking was, I'm a burden on my family, I'm a burden on my friends, I'm a burden to Ella. She deserves somebody that is completely the opposite of me right now, and surely James is a catch, and he can remarry, and she'll be a better mom than me, and she can do a better job than I can. So I'm not needed. So that's kind of where my mind was going. The other one was, you'll never get the hang of this, and you're not strong enough to do this. So those were the lies that were constantly in my head that were really hard to deal with.
So let's talk about then, if those are the feelings that you're feeling, and it's so great to kind of have someone who would be honest and let us know the actual thoughts someone that's struggling with postpartum depression are feeling. And it's important to note, these are not real. This isn't truth.
Right.
This is your mind playing tricks on you ultimately, right?
Yes.
And so let's talk about this, though, from a faith perspective, because you also have that layer going on, oh my gosh, this isn't what Jesus would do. And how did, as a follower of Christ, how am I not feeling love? I thought this is what I'm supposed to be all about. Right.
So that was really hard for me going through it as well. I can honestly say I was never mad at God for going through what I was going through, but I absolutely questioned why. Why me? Why am I dealing with this? What is wrong with me? And I did get to the point where I was not believing truth. And I call this my darkest hour. My mom had to call my husband home from work because I was in a very bad mental suicidal state. And so he came home and said, Aly, we just need to pray. I said, I do not want to pray. I don't believe in that right now. That is not truth for me right now. And he still tried to wrap me up in a hug and keep me from shaking because I was totally not in control of my body. And I started physically fighting him to get off of me. And he ended up just having to force me to get into the car to go to the ER. But I can tell you from the faith perspective is I questioned why I was going through it, and I did not believe the truth at all that I knew. I've been a follower of Christ for 10 years, so I know these things, but in that moment, they were absolutely not true for me at all.
So another, I know, huge message you want to get out to the folks that are listening is that postpartum depression is not a lifelong sentence. Right. You can find help. And obviously, I'm looking at you today and you're describing these things and I'm like, this is not the person sitting in front of me. So I know you have experienced healing.
Yes.
And I know God had a part of that, but also
Yes.
I know you had help, you said, from professionals as well. So
Yes.
talk through how someone can walk out of this. Let's talk about the hope that is present for people struggling.
Right. So I was miraculously healed by God. I had a healing moment with my mother-in-law and my husband praying over me. And whenever they were praying, you could just feel the atmosphere shift in the room. And I had a vision of me just laying in Jesus's lap, and he said, "Aly, I see you. I'm not leaving you like this." And that was huge for me because I was looking at myself and I was like, I don't even know this person, and he just promised me he's going to take me out of that. And he did instantly. After that happened, I was still laying on the floor sobbing, and my mother-in-law and husband looked up at each other and was like, she was just healed. I mean, you could feel it. The spirit of depression left. And ever since then, I've been really able to combat any thoughts that would come with scripture, with truth, because Jesus did miraculously heal me. But I do want to touch on the clinical side of it as well, because I very much had a spiritual experience, which God can do for everybody. But I also don't want there to be any shame in counseling, reaching out to your OB, taking medication. I was prescribed antidepressants, and I'm still on them today just to combat the feelings coming back. So really the stigma around the medical stuff within the church is a huge thing. And I would just encourage pastors and members within the church to not shame anybody for taking medicine if they have a mental illness, because it's just that. It's an illness. You would never look at somebody with cancer or diabetes and say, well, you just haven't prayed enough. You don't need to take your medicine. You just haven't prayed enough. And I think that is where the mental illness stuff gets blurry within the church, is that you think it's just a thought or a feeling, but really it's an illness. And so the medications are necessary for some people, as they're necessary for me. Even though I am a Christ follower, even though I pray every day, I still needed the medication, and a lot of people do.
And today, because of that help, your relationship with your daughter, since I've heard you brag on her about 14 times since you've been in the room as we've prepped.
Yes, my relationship with her is amazing. After the spirit of depression lifted, I was actually able to bond with her. I looked at her for the first time. My husband handed her to me after that prayer, and I looked at her, I was like, oh my gosh, I love you. This is what I was supposed to feel. And there was something totally blocking that for me in my mind. But ever since then, she has just grown into the happiest, giggliest, most joy-filled baby that I have ever known. And she brings so much joy to my life, contrary to what the first 2.5 months of her life, where I was in despair and didn't want her and couldn't look at her. She just absolutely completes my world now and our family.
Sounds like you had a ton of support from your husband.
Yes.
What about, can you speak? I know you guys have probably talked about it. Can you speak what the struggles look like from the perspective of a spouse in postpartum depression?
Yes. So my husband obviously has a job, and he had to go back 2 weeks after Ella was born, which was really when things were getting bad. And so he was working, also having to take care of a newborn because, as I've said, I couldn't hardly look at her, and take care of me and my emotions. And I ended up having a C-section, so I physically was out for 6 weeks. And so he took on all of that burden, and he did it with such grace. And he did it with such compassion towards me, and was very understanding and just kept affirming to me, even though I didn't believe it. He said, Aly, this is not you, and this will get better. And he knew that. Instead of blaming me, instead of, why are you like this? Why don't you want to be with our daughter? He knew that I was going through something clinical, that I was going through an illness. And so he handled it with such grace, but that is not because he is a superhuman. That is because he prayed and also sought out advice from his dad, who said, you're just going to have to persevere. You're just going to have to rely on the Lord for your strength right now. And that needs to be your word, is perseverance through this. And so he clung to that. And instead of feeling, woe is me, all of this responsibility has just fallen on me, he was like, the Lord calls me to do this. I'm equipped to do it. And he's not surprised that this happened to Aly. So therefore, I'm here as her support. And so he handled it with such grace, but like I said, not because he's a superhuman, but because he fully relied on God to give him the strength.
Sounds like the church has an opportunity to help families that are willing to ask for help. I see the statistic here that only 15% of the families going through this actually reach out for help.
Yes.
Which should be a cue to all of us as ministers that we need to be talking about it, whether or not people are talking about it to us. If we talk about it, we probably might free someone up to ask for help. But when they do, it sounds like just a very basic need would be while the spouse is out earning a living, somebody needs to be at home helping take care of the baby and support the mom.
Yes, and actually that was the first ER doctor that I encountered when I went for the first time said, you cannot be alone with a baby. You are not stable. You may hurt her. You may hurt yourself. And so somebody had to be with me at all times. And so that was a huge thing for me.
So you see, guys, we get into ministry because we see needs and we can help meet those needs through the power of Christ. And this is an incredible need in your community. If you're looking for ways to connect with your city, I think we have found one today. And there's no way you can do that without support. And that's what ppdjourney.com is all about. Now, tell us about this before you go. Tell us about the site. Tell us how this came about. And tell us how we can connect with it and how you can help the ministers listening.
Yes. So after going through it, I really felt the Lord speak to me. This story is not for you to keep in the shadows. It's not for you to keep to yourself, but you need to be vocal about it because there is a need. There are women struggling. And especially, I hurt for my sisters in Christ that are struggling in this as well as everybody, but especially the church, because I just hadn't heard about it. And when I put it out there on social media that this was something I'd been dealing with, a lot of them were Christians that came to me and had said, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing this. And so really after opening up about it, I saw that there was a need for some community base, for there to be stories shared, and really to instill hope that Christ is with you, Christ can heal you, and through community and through talking about it, you will also find some of that healing. So I created PPD Journey because I believe that it is going to be a journey of healing, because I'm honestly still on that journey myself. Even though I'm so much better, I still have my days, and it is still a journey. So what PPD Journey is all about is finding healing through community. And so I'm collecting stories, written stories. I'm collecting video testimonies. And then we also have a forum where women can chat candidly on there without any fear of, people that they don't want to open up to seeing it. It's just a group of moms that is going through the exact same thing. So yeah, PPD Journey is just a source of community.
Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I hope now you've kind of got it flagged in your brain if you hear of someone struggling with it, or if you have a platform where you can communicate, hey, if there is anybody struggling, I've got a neat resource. Either way, whether you do it through social media or whatever you do, please take a note of ppdjourney.com. And Aly Thayer, thank you for being with us today. You're on social media, I see.
Yes, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So.
Well, you guys check it out. A great resource. Thank you for being with us.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you.
What if you could multiply your ministry 168 times over? We have a way for you to do that today. We believe that true discipleship is attained through diligently studying God's Word and applying the Scriptures to your daily life. Spending 1 hour each week out of 168 in a worship service is simply not enough. D6 devotional study guides are here to help. Each week, everyone in your family studies the same theme, with lessons and devotions appropriate to each age level. Moms and dads will love the devotions and articles as conversation starters. Children will love reading and playing games in their own devotional study guide. Families will love spending time together during the week discussing and studying the Scriptures. To learn more about the D6 devotional magazines, you can go to d6family.com/D6curriculum.
Jeremy, thank you for that interview. I can attest, it's been a while, but my wife went through that same item and with one of our children, and it's very, very difficult. And when you do feel lonely, I think so many parents can take encouragement from what you guys have shared, and churches can take instruction from it.
I think the thing that strikes me the most with this topic is that there's hope afterwards.
Yeah.
It's not a sentence for life, and there are people that can help, and you can move past it. And it is a season. It can be a season.
It feels long when you're in it, I'm sure, but again, that's the time for the church to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're going to jump into Robert, and again, I think we've given him a tremendous amount of setup. And recognize the single parents that are in your church and the ones your church could be ministering to. If you get this right, you'll have a growth in your church that will shock you. So let's listen to Robert and what this can do. Sitting here with Robert Beeson, and Robert, you and I connected several years back. You have been given a seat, I would call it in the stadium of what God is doing, that not many people get to sit where you have sat. You have been part of some incredible ministries in the media. You've been involved in the music industry. You've helped launch some groups. Matter of fact, our listening audience can't see what I'm seeing over your shoulder here. Over your shoulder in your office, I'm seeing gold records, and there's probably other records. I know this may feel awkward to you, but tell us some of the groups that are on those records that you had a hand in working with.
Well, I was very fortunate to work with a number of artists that have had a serious impact on our culture. Jars of Clay was the first one that I signed, and then working with Third Day and Casting Crowns, Michael W. Smith, Caedmon's Call, as well as developing some concept records like worship records like City on a Hill and that kind of thing. So I've been very, very fortunate to work with some amazing artists.
You are, and you're a very capable person. Your insight on the culture and media. I've just enjoyed our conversations each time we've been together. In fact, we've had some fun debates along the way, not only over culture, but even over food, as I remember our last time together.
Funny how those things are the things that jump out, right?
It is. Well, you have continued to follow your walk with Christ. And last time you and I had lunch together, you kind of revealed to me something that God has led you to, but it was a result of a very painful point in your life. Yeah. Let's pull back the curtains in brief and let the audience in on what happened in your life that brought you to today.
So often, even in ministry, and I might even say especially in ministry, we get so caught up in our calling, so to speak, or what we're doing, that we neglect what's going on right at home. And that I was guilty of that, and had a tremendous career, but at home I was not putting that first. And so, to make a very long story short, my wife of 13 years had been dealing with a bunch of addiction issues. And I say my fault in this issue because I don't completely fault her. She turned to a vice that wasn't a healthy vice at all, but it didn't come out of nowhere. And so eventually, unfortunately, her addiction won, and she ended up leaving my daughters and I when they were 9, 7, and 4. And I woke up one morning, and although we had been having a rocky time, I don't think anything could have prepared me for that moment when it felt like all the air was sucked out of the room and there was a new normal that was beginning. I was going to be a single dad of 3 girls. So that lasted. I was a single dad of my 3 daughters for 8.5 years, and with sole custody. And it started a journey that, although it was a very, very difficult season, was probably the most important thing to ever happen to me.
How did the church, and I'm asking this question because I kind of know this is where we're heading, but how did the churches know how to deal with your circumstances?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think the church does know how to deal with this effectively. There are a few exceptions, but by and large, I didn't feel like I fit in anymore in any of the groups that I was going to in the church that I went to. It wasn't that I felt like shunned necessarily, but it was just that I didn't fit. And it was unfortunate because that's the time that I needed it the most. And I think the church sometimes is hesitant to reach out to divorced families because they don't want to appear like they're condoning divorce. I was with a friend earlier today that when we talked about this, and he said it would be the same as a hospital doesn't condone malaria, it just treats it. And so I kind of felt like one of those wounded, and I didn't know how to fit into the church. And I don't think the church knew how to meet me where I was at.
So that brings us to today and what God has led you in your ministry. You're much further down the road. Your daughters at that point was 9, 7, and 4. They are today what ages?
21, 19, and 16.
And
so it's been a long time.
It has. And you and I, and I'm going to cut through the chase on this for our audience. I've talked with you about your daughters. You have navigated these waters well. I commend you for where your daughters are in life. But you've decided to come up with some helps for churches to step in that gap and help where we don't know what to do. Tell us about that and what's important for single dads. What was going through your mind? What did you need the most? And then how did you kind of come along with an answer for that?
I think the most important component is, let me refer to some research first, that 1 in 3 homes in America right now are single parent homes, according to the latest census. And 67% of those homes or those families don't attend church. And the number 1 and 2 reasons are that they don't feel like they belong and they feel like they're judged. And I'm the first to tell you that I felt that from the church. But I am convinced that it's not because the church doesn't care. I think it's because the church doesn't know exactly what to do, like we just talked about. And so what I have kind of committed my efforts to is not being the antidote to that, but to help, first of all, churches understand that there's a massive need out there. I consider these fractured homes as kind of the widows and orphans of our modern day culture. And they, by and large, are feeling alienated from the one true hope that can actually restore and redeem these families. And so I started this organization called Solo Parent Society a couple years ago, and recently stepped aside from the job that I was doing to give myself to it full time because I just feel like it's that important. We started a community group at our church called the Solo Parent Society here in Nashville. And within the first week, we were full at capacity. And this is different than divorce care because this is not about the triage of divorce. This is more about building communities where single parents can support each other. So this is an interesting fact. I think your listeners will find interesting. We were at capacity within a week. It was never mentioned from the pulpit. And 30% of the people that came to our Solo Parent Society groups didn't attend the church at the time. And so it had spread word of mouth like just crazy. And this was an amazing opportunity for outreach for our church. And so we built formats for churches to be able to build these communities in their churches, in their neighborhoods you don't have to be an expert or have all the answers to bring people together and say that we see you, we want to serve you, and we love you. And so we've created a large group format, a small group format, and a just between friends format. And we're rolling that out for churches to just start it at their facility. I mean, really, it's so if you can read, you can lead these groups. And so we're doing that, and we're building. We have resources, our own podcast, and some ebooks, and of course, my book came out. And so I just think it's time that the church step up and really. I don't want to shame the church at all. I mean, I just, like you said, and we've been talking. I just don't think we know exactly how to take the first step. But these families are in desperate need of understanding that restoration and redemption can happen, and not only that, but like it happened in my life, it can be the most transformational season of your life.
It can. So when your church did not announce this from the pulpit, did not promote it, but first week you're at capacity, it means that you scratched a sincere need, a serious need.
Yeah.
What are the top 3 or 4 things that solo parents struggle with, that they need that community? What are some of the things that this addresses? Help us with this.
They feel forgotten. One of the number one things is they feel forgotten by the groups that they used to be in. Families look different. You had in-laws at one point, and now that's separated. You may have been involved in a small group or a community, and couples, or like couples that get together, and you kind of don't fit in that group anymore. Your kids don't. People stop inviting you to the family functions because it's kind of a fragmented home. So you really feel alone and forgotten. I think that's one of the number one things that we deal with. And then I think the other thing is just that we feel completely overwhelmed. There are so many things to do. In 2-parent homes, it's hard to get them all done. But when you take one of the components out of that, it's almost impossible. It's not a matter of like, if a ball is going to drop that's in the air, it's a matter of which one. And usually it's the ball that has me written on it, and we don't take care of ourselves. And so I would say to churches, anyone that's listening, I mean, I would encourage you to start some kind of group. If it's not Solo Parent Society, some kind of group where these families can plug in. And 2, just look for the small needs. It is incredibly helpful to have someone else pick up the kids from school or to run them to an appointment. Or if you're running to the grocery store, hey, can I get something for you? I mean, this is just a simple example, but when you go to bed, the kids, especially if they're young, and you realize after the kids are all in bed that you're out of milk or you're out of whatever, you can't just leave your kids. I mean, there's all these little components that don't seem like a big deal, but those are the very real areas that the church and just individuals can help other single parents. And don't wait for single parents to ask for help, because we're already embarrassed because we feel so broken.
Those are good insights, and I don't think we realize the freedom we have when we have another partner, our spouse, in the homes. So one more question: a church is going to begin this type of ministry. Who did they tap to lead it? You said it's as simple as reading it, but I mean, they don't have to dedicate or carve out more time for a key staff member to do it. Who do you recommend being a key leader of this ministry?
In our ministry here, of course, I've been involved, but I'm not there every week because I travel quite a bit. It can be anyone from someone that was a single parent before that they don't need to have a degree or any kind of affiliation, even official with the church, but just someone that is willing to read over 13 topics, one a week, and corresponding scriptures, and then just a guide to help people process. This is more like Celebrate Recovery than it is like divorce care. And so it's really about facilitating, finding a place that these people can meet, and then someone to just kind of read through the guided formats. It does not, and I think that's the key thing. Churches don't have an extra staff member. It's not, but everybody that is listening to this knows a single parent. I'm convinced that there's not one person that's listening to this podcast that is not affected or does not touch a single parent. And so if you at all feel called to reach out to those people, you don't have to be a pastor to do that. It's really about recognizing them, saying, I see you, I want to be here with you, I want to serve you. And so it's really simple.
I want to remind our listeners that family ministry is not defined as the perfect two parents and two kids, and there are a lot of single parents out there that are either incredible D6 moms or they're incredible D6 dads, and they're walking a difficult road. There are grandparents who are raising their children as primary parents, and Robert has touched on an area that he hasn't created a new need. He's just magnifying a need that has been in existence for a long time, and he's given you some easy solutions. Robert, give them the name of your website for where they can go.
Soloparentsociety.com. It's everything you need to know is there.
And your name of your book is Going Solo, correct?
Yep, it's Going Solo, Hope and Healing for the Single Mom or Dad.
There you go. So go check that out on Amazon. Go to his website. This is a time for you to begin exploring, and I'm telling you what, you could launch a new ministry going into your next school year, your calendar year, and start making a world of difference as a church who says, I care for every family member, regardless of the circumstances they've been through. Because I tell you what, our Lord is redemptive, and this ministry that Robert has been talking about, solo parenting, is a redemptive ministry as well. Thank you, Robert, for your vision. Thank you for sharing your pain with our audience. I count you a friend, and I think as people dive in deeper, they're going to be very, very thankful that you have befriended them today on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Ron. I love what you guys are doing at D6.
All right, thank you to my man, Robert Beeson. I remember very clearly the lunch we shared where I introduced you to each other, and the thing that I introduced about you two, that we were having a good lunch.
We were.
Everything was cool, but then I said, hey, did y'all know that y'all are both food snobs and that y'all are foodies?
And we took it from there, didn't we?
And y'all didn't stop.
No, I found a brother from another mother, and we have been friends ever since. You know, I want to commend Robert, because from my time in pastoring and what I see in churches today, single moms show up to church, but single dads don't. Mm-hmm. This guy has not only shown up, but he's decided to take it to the level of saying, let me show you how to help other dads and help other moms in this. So,
in a very key moment, he could have tapped out.
He could have, and most would have.
And look what God has done with him sticking in.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I love Robert. I wish all of you could meet him in person, just a gem of a person.
Check out his website. See what you can do with helping the parents in your church.
Also, check us out next week. We have 2 more great guests. If you're in the youth ministry world, you probably have heard the names Kenny and Elle Campbell from Stuff You Can Use. They are an amazing power couple in the youth ministry world. I'm telling you, if you know them, you understand what I'm talking about. Incredibly creative. And Elle specifically specializes kind of in the idea of training small group leaders. She's written some really cool books for that. And we're going to be talking to her about small group leaders and how that applies to family ministry. And then we also have Josh Mulvihill.
Josh Mulvihill, that's right.
Mulvihill. Sorry, Josh. Me and Josh are friends. and Josh, he does better than me at pronouncing your name. My bad, Josh.
No, we're good. I was actually thinking through that Josh is like this really incredible known expert on grandparenting, and we're going to venture off into a slightly different topic next week with Josh. He has a lot more expertise than grandparenting, even though that's what he's known for, and we're going to jump off into his other area.
Wow, it's a nice little tease. All right, we'll be looking forward to that. Okay, you guys, listen, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being a part. And when I say this almost every episode, but I mean it with all my heart, I really do hope you have a great week of ministry. There is a sacredness and a privilege to it, and I hope that you never forget that and enjoy it this week as best you can, even if it's a bad week.
That's right.
And whether it's good or a bad week, we'll be here next week with you. And thanks so much for listening to the D6 podcast.